I hope that they are able to get some sense of that connection with our own world, really. Seeing the planet anew or seeing the skies again, just looking up. That would be wonderful if they could just take some sense of that.
When I came across Rohini Devasher's work, I was intrigued how she used her art form to explore our natural world, how science, fiction, and speculation can transform our construct of this planet. Having trained as a painter and printmaker, Rohini enjoys working in a variety of media, such as video, prints, and wall drawings. Her art has been showcased in museums across the world. Rohini was named as Forbes Contemporary Artist of the Year in 2014 and Skoda Breakthrough Artist Award in 2013. Hi, I'm Mahati Rangarajan and welcome to this week's Maharani Talks. So let's find out what draws Rohini to this subject. How has it been for you as an artist? I'm guessing you might be doing more virtual kind of showings rather than the...
Some of it, yeah. I mean, I think there have been a few, I participated in a few things online. One of them was very recently. It was a collaborative performative essay, which was meant to happen physically in Basel at a theatre space called Kazan. Okay. And that didn't happen, obviously. So that's happened long distance, but which also made other kinds of things possible because I never met my collaborator, who's a phenomenal sound artist called Legion 7. We never met. We just conversed online. And what we came up with together, what they came up with based on my text was just phenomenal. So they were able to perform the live part of the performative essay in sight, and then mine was more pre-recorded and that kind of thing. So some of those things have been quite a revelation because it feels like if we can do this much long distance, then how much more could one achieve, physically if we had been in the same space. So some of these have been really exciting, but I think it has been very challenging for the art world also because not everything can be taken into the digital successfully. I think some of, not all of it is entirely transportable. And there's been such a glut of just the screen, whether it's your phone or your laptop and all of that. I mean, to be honest, there's beyond a point, there's only so much one can take in. So I feel like actually it's quite a challenge. And I think everyone is hoping that things will at some point get back to some kind of normal, although that is a long way in the future. And everyone's looking at sort of hybrid models where you do something online and something offline. But I think for a lot of artists, it's been very difficult, especially artists who are younger, who have just finished college or who are in the middle trying to figure out what's going on, and spaces to show have shut down. We have no infrastructure for the arts, as you are aware, so it's extremely challenging.
That's true. Like an earlier artist I spoke to, she's a musician, Malvika Manoj, and she was saying how at a time like this, yes, people turn to art for, to cope with such times. But at the same time, art is the first thing to get cancelled because it's not, crucial. So it's saying it's a paradox.
Essential.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a paradox. It is. No, and also things like payment. It's also things like who is funding the arts. Usually it's the first kind of funding also to get cut. And performance artists in particular, I mean, that's an entirely live. It's very difficult. I mean, it can be recreated. You can have a concert, I suppose, online, but it is a totally different thing, the entire premise of the practice is based on interaction with audiences and feeding off of that and that kind of thing. And similarly with art, I mean, we've also had conversations with many artists. I've had conversations with artists because so much of this is, with the exception perhaps of like video or film, but even that sometimes you require a scale, but things like painting or drawing or sculpture, there is something to be said about being in the presence of the object. Everyone is hoping that this is a temporary moment. There was a lot of excitement, I think, in like March, when everyone was, okay, then now it's like, it's not ending. So
I know, I told myself, okay, till December, but now I'm like pushing it, okay, maybe summer.
Maybe March. Yeah, exactly. Summer seems more. And I mean, you have kids, I have a daughter. So it's also all of that thing of now everybody sharing the same space and sharing, So it's been amazing. And also it's challenging because now everyone is working from home and that takes on a whole other layers. So to be honest, in terms of being productive, like again, March was super productive. I did a lot of work. And now I have done work, but in different ways. So it's been like writing, it's been research, it's been more planning, because I'm sharing my space with more people. So then it is difficult actually to find that headspace to just, stop and do something.
Yeah, your thoughts keep getting interrupted.
Exactly.
So, when I came across your art, I loved how you were connecting or interconnecting science and the art form. So, could you tell me, when did your tryst with art begin?
I think with art, it was quite early. I was lucky. My mom had trained as a graphic designer at the College of Art in Delhi. So she was always very artistic and creative. And my school, which was Air Force Val Bharti, had an art program. And we had an amazing art teacher in the junior and senior school. So I was able to take painting as a subject in my, 11th and 12th as a board exam subject.
Okay.
So after school, it was pretty much, I only applied to arts and creative colleges. I didn't apply to anything else. And I got into the College of Art in Delhi. And then it was the best, challenging 4 years, but it was also the best 4 years because I loved everything I did. But the College of Art is a very academic course. So what it gives you in skill, it doesn't possibly prepare you for, conceptually for what it means to be a practicing artist, like the questions of what it is, what is self-expression, what are the questions you're looking at. So the tryst began early. That was a very long answer. Sorry, that was a simple question. That is the answer. It began early. Yes.
But yes, you studied, painting. And I liked how you said that, though it was very academic, it didn't prepare you on how to express yourself. And I read that soon after you switched to printmaking. And you also said that it defined the way you worked.
Yeah.
Could you tell me why printmaking became important to you?
So, so painting, a 4-year degree in College of Art, as I said, was very academic, lots of emphasis on things like still life and outdoor and that kind of stuff. But we were very fortunate in printmaking, especially in etching, because printmaking is sort of divided into several different media. You have screen printing, lithography, and etching, all of which together are printmaking. And basically, a print making is a plate which is made out of either metal, stone, or a screen, and then the making of multiples from that, right? Printmaking. So we had Anupam Sood,
okay,
who was our teacher in third year and fourth year, and she is the most phenomenal printmaker, of course, and she is a wonderful, wonderful teacher. She was very tough, but she was a perfectionist when it came to the medium. And I think there was something about. I think I found great solace in the process, because the process is very specific. Like a metal plate has to be polished to a certain level before it'll accept a ground. The ground is what you lay on a metal plate before you can start to think about drawing into it. So there are really specific levels to which you have to do things materially, and there was some comfort in that, and there is some comfort in the labor of polishing a metal plate or beveling an edge and all those kinds of things. It was I didn't enjoy the editioning so much, which means, like you have to make perfect copies. That was not so much my cup of tea, but I did enjoy the process, because then what happens is the process has its own characteristics and it dictates in a sort of sense where the work could go, like, so you may have an idea of what the plate will be, but then depending on the kind of etch or how deeply the acid has bitten into the surface, it'll change. So that was really enjoyable. And I think so what I did was, after college, I took a 3-year break. I worked at an art gallery. I did a bunch of other research projects, tried to make money. And I worked at a printmaking studio, which was run by Devraj Dakuji and his wife, which was called, I'm going to forget completely. Studio, I'll have to look that up. Studio 22, I think, Atelier 22. Yeah, and it was in Shahpur. And so I did that for 3 years, and I realized if I wanted to do an MA, which I did, then I felt like process was something that I wanted to explore further. So then I decided to do a master's in printmaking. Okay. So it was a 1-year degree that focused on printmaking. And so the question which you brought up, which is that I feel like it's defined the work, is absolutely, because as I said, the thing about printmaking is the plate and the print, right? And then the idea that you can make multiples of one image. But what I became interested in is what you can do if you have one image, but instead of editioning it several times, you take that one image and you keep layering it on the same surface. So it became a a question of looking into things like pattern and emergence of pattern, and how pattern emerges out of chaos, and at what point chaos takes over. And that led to an interest in mathematics and fractals. And then further that led into my interest in botany and plants and morphology. So that started one journey. And then further after that, actually, when I started working in video, which was with video feedback, which is another very fascinating emergent process, it's exactly the same thing, like the material, like with the print, the plate leads the way. In this case, the video leads the way. So that's why I feel like printmaking sort of set the tone for a lot of the other work.
Okay. So was incorporating technology into your art a very smooth transition, or was it like a natural outcome of what you were doing?
Well, it feels natural now, but actually technology possibly came in the MA itself when I started to work with Photoshop as a very beginning, just to see what it would allow in the idea of the print. The fact that you were not limited by the size of the plate or the size of the bed or the paper, that you could actually go as big as you wanted. So that was Photoshop. That went on for a while, and then actually my exploration with video didn't start until 2006. And at that moment, it was precisely because I felt a limitation with the print. I felt like all these layers that I work with, which at the time was like 200 layers in Photoshop, when you print it out, it's totally flat. Yeah. So how do you make layering visible? How do you bring temporality in? And that's when I discovered like a DIY tutorial online on video feedback. So I tried it out myself. And it took a while. Like when I say I discovered video feedback in 2006, it wasn't until 2007 that anything came out of it, because you need, like, in the sense you collect material, but then you need the skill. So the advantage with Photoshop is that it was a slow journey into Adobe Premiere Pro. So then I was able to figure out how to edit very basically, So yeah, it started off slow, but now the advantage is then that I can do my own editing and all that kind of stuff. So it started like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the video feedback, which I first came across when I was like reading up on you, and it was actually interesting. What I didn't know that such a thing existed, and
neither did I.
Yeah. It's not conventional art, right? I mean, most people don't immediately take up to it. So for you, were you had any self-doubt about that? Okay, if I take this up, will it be well received?
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't that so much as I had a more sort of, I think, existentialist crisis at the time, because I had only done prints and drawings. So for me, it felt like a massive leap into the unknown. So it was more about doubting whether I knew what I was doing within the world of video. But once I did it, I also realized that it was the only way I possibly could have started work in video, because it was a language I understood. It was talking about pattern. It was talking about emergent systems the same way that my prints were. So absolutely, there was doubt, but it was more because I thought maybe I didn't know what this was going to look like within my own practice. And similarly, actually, when I began to work with this larger astronomy project, which is now almost 10 years old, there was a big moment it was a long period of, like, it was almost a year's moment when I was not sure where this experience, if you like, fitted in at all in practice. Because again, it had been now, okay, so it was video, prints, drawings, but then where did this come, And I think it's just a function of time. You have to give it time to sit with you and to see if it has any role or place in the practice. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is quite time consuming, right? Like the videos that I was watching, it just plays along for quite some time. And you, like you said, you keep layering it and layering it. How was that? Can you take me through that? It must be a lot of patient work.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could share my screen. I could with you separately. We could do that. But yeah, so essentially it's like a backward jigsaw puzzle. So you have all the pieces of, like, moving jigsaw puzzle. You have all these pieces, and then you basically stitch them together to make something. It's not always backwards. Sometimes it's forwards. Like, I don't always know what the work will be before I start. And then it's just, I like that slowness. I like the fact that I like complexity. I like to see how far I can push the level of complexity. So one of the pieces, which possibly you saw, which looks like a tree, arboreal, is 16 minutes long. And that's one of the more complex video pieces, because it's complex in a linear way. And then there's another body of work which was done more recently in 2018-19, which was called Hopeful Monsters, which is also video feedback, but that was with insects. So it was It was very complex, but not as linear. So it didn't feel like it was more a body of complexity, if you see what I mean.
Okay.
But it does take time. That's the answer. But I also think it takes me about 2 years to develop a project, like a bunch of work, because many things satellite around, it's like a constellation of many, many moving bits.
Yeah. And I was amazed how much of these images, they actually seem to look like, like organisms, like at the very cell structure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did that fascinate you when you first discovered it?
Yes, that's exactly why it's so incredible. So I've done more homework on that recently, because we did a show in Bangalore online at the Bangalore Science Gallery called Phytopia, where we showed arboreal. And then I was doing some homework for just, because they did this lovely interaction with younger people. So just trying to explain to them what video feedback is. So basically, it's a class of fractals, So the same reason you've got ferns that branch the way they do. Video feedback, when it's created with mirrors, so it's complicated without actually showing it to you, but you have to imagine a handheld camera, that's any regular handheld camera that's plugged into a TV, so that if the camera, whatever the camera sees is showing on the TV, right?
Right.
But if you point the camera at the TV, so it's looking at itself. So it's like two mirrors facing each other. You get an infinite number of reflections. And if you play with the ambient light, so that means you have to draw the curtains in the room, just in a little bit of light, not too much light, not complete darkness. And then if you add mirrors at right angles to the TV, then essentially what happens is that light, which is being fed in a loop between the two machines, bounces off more surfaces, and it creates fractal-like behavior. And that fractal-like behavior is what we see in self-organization of pattern in nature, whether it's snowflakes, whether it's the shell pattern on the pattern on snail shells, plants, all that kind of stuff. So it's this mirroring actually, which was completely amazing to me.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's such an embodied process, like your hand moves and the circle becomes a pentagon. If you move it again, then it'll become a diamond, like all those amazing spiral shapes and all that is because you are moving the camera. So it feels like a very embodied process as well, and very self-generative.
Yeah. Do you think, is it mostly chaos that you find, or is there some kind of patterns? But in the art form itself, you say how, it seems to start off as chaos, but actually it kind of replicates as patterns.
Yeah, the behavior is very chaotic. Like, it's very difficult to recreate the exact same thing twice. So I think if you were to set it up as an experiment, I haven't tried that. Like, I've never tried to recreate the same behavior twice. So what I usually do is I just record whatever I see in let's say an hour or two, right? Which means that I do all kinds of things with the camera. I change the light, I change the angle of the mirrors, etc., etc. And whatever behavior is recorded is then dumped and then chopped up into bits. And then those pieces are then reassembled to make the work. So the work is actually, the final work doesn't look anything like the raw material of video feedback. The raw material of video feedback is actually, could just be a single, what looks like a single stem of a tree, which then becomes multiplied exponentially in the work. Similarly, it could be just what looks like an octopus arm, which then in the work will become a full organism made out of many arms. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like the behavior is quite chaotic, but there's definitely huge amounts of pattern in it.
Okay. You also did, you delved into astronomy. Could you tell me what got you interested in that?
So essentially, I've been a huge fan of sci-fi and speculative fiction forever. Like, it started with Star Trek and Star Wars, and what was that show that used to come on DD? There was that one, it had that guy called, anyway, there was a science fiction show in Hindi.
Giant Robo?
No, it had this guy who had a half metal. What is the name of that show? I can't remember. Anyway, I forget. But I've been a huge fan of sci-fi, because I feel like it's one of those amazing genres where the basic question is what if? And the minute you ask that question, the answers are automatically going to take you in very interesting places. So a friend of mine and I, in our second year of College of Art, were looking actually for like a sci-fi club in Delhi. And we couldn't find one. But we did find the Amateur Astronomers Association at the Nehru Planetarium. So we joined that group instead. And that's it, really. We would meet every Sunday on the roof of the planetarium for chai. And the group was very diverse, just a bunch of people from photographers, documentary filmmakers, astrophysics students, physics students, mathematics students, across the age spectrum, and just people who were just interested in, like us, questions about the larger universe, about sci-fi, about astronomy. So it stayed like that for a good 4 or 5 years. We would attend their telescope making workshops. We would go to see the meteor showers in like Hagdarpur, go on overnight observations, things like that we would do. And then, I went to do my MA, and then I lost touch with the group for a long period of time. And then when I came back in 2010, there was a solar eclipse in Patna, in Bihar. And it was one of the longest solar eclipses of the century. Like it was almost 7 minutes of totality, which is a huge period of time. So I decided, I got in touch with a few of them who were making their way to the Patna planetarium. And I went to the planetarium and we set up on the roof, and it was an early morning eclipse, like 6 o'clock, I think, was when the eclipse was supposed to begin. And until 3 in the morning, it was perfect. Conditions were amazing. But at 3, clouds started to gather. And then at 6 o'clock, it was completely overcast.
Oh.
So all the telescopes remained covered. And then just as totality began, it started to pour. So that means there's cloud, there's rain. The temperature has dropped. You felt, all of that. And there was complete chaos. Everyone was screaming and shouting. And then for 7 minutes, you just stood there in darkness. But it was the most incredible experience, because it felt like it was the first time I was aware of my position, physical position on the planet. The fact that you are on a sphere in space and these huge bodies are moving, and then you are somewhere in the middle of this conjunction between the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun.
Yeah.
So the eclipse finishes, and then I just felt like, there was something there, something that could be channelized. There's something about the energy and the exhilaration on the roof. So when I came back to Delhi, coincidentally, within a couple of weeks, I think Sarai at the time, the Sarai, which is the city as a studio, Sarai, which is CSDS, the Center for Developing Studies in Delhi. Rux Media Collective, which is this wonderful collective of artist curators, had just set up something called a City as a Studio Fellowship Program. So they were inviting 10 people, artists, dancers, scientists, whatever, to explore the city as a studio. So what does the city as a studio mean? So I said, okay, I'm going to put together a one-page proposal, just seeing if I can try and understand what draws the amateur astronomer to the night sky. Why do they do what they do, as a way of understanding why I do it as well? Because I was also interested in my own position as kind of both participant and observer. So what does that mean? And how do you bring these experiences to life once they're done? So I got the fellowship, and then it basically meant that for 9 months, I started with interviews. So I would interview the people I knew. They would put me in touch with other people they knew. So I started to basically conduct interviews face-to-face with amateur astronomers. And all the questions started with, how did it begin? Why do you do it? What do you imagine for the future for it? And then all the questions were very freewheeling, because some were astrophotographers where it was much more image-based. Some of them were more interested in education. Some were more observational astronomers. And then out of those, that chunk of audio, a bunch of sites came up, like places that these amateurs kept talking, like cornerstones, or, like places that they felt were really significant. Yeah. So then I started traveling. So I started to plan short expeditions. So we went to I've been to several all over India, which have all been amazing. And in all cases, the spaces themselves, which have been sometimes run by the Indian Institute of Astrophysics, they have all been so open, just to the community of amateur astronomers. So I've been to Hanle, which is the second highest observatory in Ladakh. Then I went to Gauri Bidnoor near Bangalore. Then I went to GMRT near Pune. Most of these sites are just amazing, because they're all far away from civilization. Either they're away from light pollution or radio pollution and things like that. And they're all incredibly strange. They have these incredible telescopes, which, especially when they're masked like this, have this strangeness to them, which are just awe-inspiring. So it began just with site visits and audio interviews. And then it took a bit of time before I was able to figure out what this body of material meant in terms of work.
I know I've read actually your, published your notes on you going to these different sites and the videos you took and everything.
Yeah.
Why do you think you're so drawn towards it? Why is it you want to interpret science into an art form?
I don't know if I want to interpret science into an art form so much as I think the amateur astronomer, the figure of the amateur astronomer becomes like all of us, it's all of us. When we see, for me at least, the amateur astronomer is me, is anyone who looks up at the night sky and wonders.
Yeah.
And anyone who then projects their own thoughts and desires onto the sky, which then projects it back to you. I mean, our earliest storytelling began with the stars, So I think the other thing that, of course, is also very worrying is that most of the planet, especially in the cities, is losing the skies. Like we're losing the night sky. Delhi, you don't see the night sky. Earlier, when I joined the Amateur Astronomers Association, we could do observations from Delhi, in the heart of Delhi. And now you have to go 8 hours to get a low threshold sky. That means it's kind of dark.
Oh.
It's not really dark. It's kind of dark, right? So that's pretty horrifying to me. It feels like, especially, it makes me think that what will it mean if my daughter doesn't grow up with the stars? I feel like those are things that we should be thinking about, because it's absolutely something that is a right that we should all have access to. So I think it begins with that, and also it does give you a sense of perspective, and it makes you think about larger questions. And for me, it's all of those things. It's about also the importance of making a case for wonder, because I feel like wonder is about, it's not just about beauty. It's not about the sublime. It's about walking this line between the strangeness and the uncanny, and then when that happens, it can change how you see things, the same way the speculative can.
Okay. What would you like people to take away when they see your art?
I don't really, whatever they do, actually, I think it would be wonderful if they could, no, really, I feel like I don't really get very attached to the work once it's out in the world. I would love for them to get something from it, in the sense, I hope that they are able to get some sense of that connection with our own world, really. Some connection with this experience of seeing the planet anew, or seeing the skies again, looking up again, just looking up, just changing perspectives. That would be wonderful. But I think a lot of people will, in any case, bring their own projections to all work. So that would be wonderful if they could just take some sense of that.
I really liked how you showed atmosphere, where, we usually see the blue globe as from the space, and you showed it from the ground.
Yeah.
That was actually a different, very interesting perspective. You worked with so many mediums, whether it's printmaking or video feedback. Is there a particular medium that you are biased towards, that you enjoy the most?
Oh, that's a very good question. I don't think so. I think what happens is that a certain ease develops with a process. So video, for instance, I've become increasingly more comfortable with, both in terms of recording material, but also in terms of then editing it or working with it. But then in the lockdown, in fact, I suddenly drew again, and I haven't drawn, just done a drawing, fully a drawing, nothing that was not part print, part drawing. I did a drawing after a very long time, and I enjoyed it.
Could I know what you drew?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So 2 years ago, I did a residency on an oil tanker. So I spent 26 days on this oil tanker. And while I was on the ship, I was basically suspended between two spheres, the sphere of the sky, the sphere of blue, and the sphere of the ocean also.
Okay.
So I recorded both. I was taking video and photos of both, of the zenith and the depths of the ocean. So the drawing is basically like looking at those two perspectives. It's two spheres. It's a sphere which looks up, a sphere which looks down. And it's drawing and dry pastel on paper that I took off the ship. So it's on this amazing drafting paper. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, because it was completely different after a long time. Yeah. So I think each medium has its own thing. So I don't think I have a favorite. They all do very different things. Yeah.
So do you think you might start going back into painting as well?
Painting, actually, I don't know. I feel like I've been doing wall drawings consistently through it, so, and the wall drawings are now feeding in with the video work, which has been very exciting. So at Sharjah, we showed at the Sharjah Biennale in 2019, we did the big wall drawing, onto which a video was then projected. So for me, actually, I feel like the wall drawing is a kind of painting, but for whatever reason, I don't feel like the word painting fits, so I call them drawings. I mean, I shouldn't say never say never, but I haven't painted in a long time. Not since college, in fact, I don't think, or maybe just little after college. So drawing is always going to be a huge part of what I do.
And how do you feel your art has been received, especially in India?
That's not a question you should ask me, because I don't know.
From people who you've interacted with.
I feel like it's good, but then I feel like I can't be the person to answer that question, because how will I on what will I base the answer, So I think it goes well, in the sense people are still asking me to do things. So I suppose it's good. It's a tough one. No, it's a good question.
Now, I always thought your kind of art form, it's so well received, abroad in foreign countries. But in India, it's still kind of opening up. So in that way, do you feel any resistance?
No, there's no resistance. Like, in the sense, my gallery, which is Project 88 in Mumbai, has always been 100% supportive. So because I think they put their trust in their art, in the artists they represent, So I think maybe what you might, I think perhaps what you have a point with is it takes a little longer. So if I make a work, it might take a little bit longer before it gets into circulation. So Atmospheres, for instance, now is almost 10 years old. Arboreal is 10 years old. And these pieces are suddenly being shown a lot, So that, I think, is actually just a function also of the art world, that people, it takes some time, for work to get traction, if you like. Plus, I think maybe it depends on the material. If it's a print, it might be shown more easily. It's also a function of, what is available in terms of space. If it's very large work, for instance, the piece that I did at Sharjah, then we were able to show it at the Bhavdarji Art Museum in Mumbai. But then there are limits to where you can show them. But then I think most people are pretty open.
Okay. Have you ever faced artist block?
Touch wood, not for a while, but I have. No, but I realized the reason is that I work every day. So there was a period which was not that long ago, when I think about it, like only 10 years ago, where I would work towards projects, right? So if you have a show, then I would work towards the show. That doesn't happen anymore. So I work every day. And then I'm working towards a body of work. You see, I'm not working towards individual pieces, if you see what I mean. There is an overarching project, and then works happen.
Okay.
Which is very different from the way I used to work when I was younger. So the blocks happen in the sense, they're not blocks. There might be moments when you have to stop and just let the material sit, because I don't know what it needs to be. It doesn't know what it needs to, whatever, however you choose to describe that thing, But I did earlier when I was basically, now I don't do that anymore. I think I've consciously tried to stay clear of too many group shows, which don't seem to fit general paths, because there's only so much time.
Yeah.
And I know what I have to do. So I try not to get too sidetracked. Otherwise, it's just not possible to keep a focused direction going forward. Yeah.
Okay. What usually draws you to a certain type of art, the art that you're doing? Does the medium inspire it, or was it a subject that inspired? Like, I know in astronomy, it was a subject.
Again, great question. It depends entirely. With video feedback, it was the material. With printmaking, it's the method. But with most of it, it is the project. It is the research. So if it's even within astronomy, there are many strands. So there are more conceptual ideas of what it is to be an observer, or the idea of the observatory. I've been to a site, and that site needs I feel like the site has a story to tell, and that will have many different forms, which could be video, which could be print, which could be drawing, that kind of thing. So it depends on both.
Okay.
Video feedback is definitely the material, which has so many possibilities. But I think with other things, it's the conceptual frame of what I'm hoping to do.
Okay. And how do you start getting the word out? Do you find that as an artist, that's something you struggle with, or it comes easily?
That's a good question. So when you say word out, do you mean in terms of when the work is done, or do you mean when you're trying to figure out who, like, you mean early on, or do you mean like as I am today now, or both?
I mean, you've done a certain body of work, and then, you want to bring about awareness to it.
Well, I think Instagram has been, for me, a really interesting medium. More so, like, I just stopped Facebook because I just found that it was not at all a healthy, productive, interesting space to be. Instagram is nice because I feel like it can, to a point, allow you to share things.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I think my gallery, of course, is the first point, because if I want to share something, then we can talk about where we could show it, and that's the sort of thing. So usually it ends up being that, or you will share it with friends, or you will share it with other people whom you'd like, whose feedback you would like, or you, more often than not, actually, I just keep making the work and I just sit on it. And then if someone approaches me and says, we have this and we'd like to work with you, then I say, okay, I'm working on this. So it's sort of a combination of both.
Okay.
As I said, like if I'm working in a 2-year window, then I know I'm building towards a solo show. So in any case, I know that's going to happen. In between, if something happens, then, that's fine. But the aim is to show everything in as one body, because I feel that's becoming pretty important, more and more important, because work otherwise in isolation sometimes works, but it is intended to be a body.
Yeah, in fact, it's through Instagram that I came across your work. So
Yeah.
yeah. I don't think you've done too many collaborations with other artists. I know you did with a sound artist and...
I've done a few, but you're right, not that many. I've done one phenomenal, incredibly amazing, beautiful one in 2000 and I'm going to say 14, but it might be 15 at Khoj, which was this art and science residency at the Khoj Studios in Delhi, which was curated by a young curator called Sitara Chawla. And she put me together with this wonderful trio, this collective called The City as a Spaceship. And there's these 3 fantastic women who are spread between Scotland, Vienna, and Bangalore. And it's Sushmita Mohanty, Sue Fairburn, and Barbara Imhoff. And we did just 2 weeks.
Okay.
It was actually just like my collaboration with Legion 7 with Basel. Literally 2 weeks. Super productive, super energetic, and we are still in conversation. So it was fantastic. I think the few collaborations I have had have been really amazing, because it is a tricky thing. I mean, collaboration is not easy.
Yeah. So what are you currently working on?
Well, there's 2 things. One is, as I said, the material which was gathered on the ship, which is a lot. So
the owner's cabin, right?
The owner's cabin, correct. Yep. So there's a whole bunch of material, which is video, which will be drawings. So I have a whole lot of stuff to sift through and decide what shape it will become. And then last year I did a wonderful fellowship again through the Goethe Institute, which was called the 5 Million Incidents, which was curated by the Rux Media Collective. And it was essentially a bunch of projects over the course of a year and a half. I think it's still going until November. And they invited people to just think about what an incident meant to them.
Okay.
So I was interested in the Kodaikanal Solar Observatory, which is in Kodaikanal, obviously. But it's really one of the most historical observatories in the country. It used to be, or its roots were actually the Madras Observatory, which was first set up by the British in Chennai. And the remains of that are now in the Chennai Meteorological Park. And it's very, it's like nothing. It's like a...
Yeah, you posted the picture of the...
plinth. But the observatory itself is phenomenal. And I had my proposal last year was essentially to go to the observatory during the annular solar eclipse of December 26th, 2019, which was passing over Kodaikanal. And I felt like there was something to be explored in, again, this conjunction between the event, the site, and the object, which was the sun. And of course, the Kodaikanal Solar Observatory is one of the most phenomenal ones, because every day, weather permitting, for the past 150 years, they have been taking pictures of the sun. Every day for the past 150 years.
That's wonderful.
It is. Their archival material is phenomenal, and it ranges from the most spectacular hand-drawn observations of the solar disk, where people have hand-drawn the movement of sunspots over the surface of the sun. And these range from 1904, 1908, they're just disks. Then they have fantastic glass plates of observations of the sun. So I did that, and I also recorded the eclipse myself, and I spent time with the scientists there. So that's a big chunk of work where I need to explore what all this material means within the context of Kodaikanal and the eclipse. So these are the 2 things.
That sounds wonderful.
I'm excited, yeah.
Have you ever left something that you started halfway, realizing, okay, I'm losing interest, or this is not turning out the way it should have?
Yeah. In fact, I had begun something in 2012, and it was not going exactly as you said. It just, so basically I was obsessed. I still am obsessed with terrariums, like these little glass spheres where they have,
yeah.
And I was just obsessed with that. I just felt like, wow. And I kept working on something, and it wasn't going anywhere. And then during the City as a Studio residency at Khoj, I was just sharing images of that work with one of the artists, Sushmita. And then she said, but this is really interesting. We should think about this a little more. And it was just, I don't know what it was exactly, but it was just conversations with her. And then the video became, I made a video which was called Terrasphere. And I showed it to the three of them. And it was Barbara who said, but you should project this down. Like we should be looking at it like this, not like that. And then that made the work what it is now. So basically it is now a pedestal with a dome sphere onto which this little world, this little planet, this green planet is projected, 10-minute planet. So yeah, absolutely. I leave stuff for a long time because like for instance, the work from the owner's cabin was shot 2 years ago now, almost 2.5. But I either haven't had the time or the headspace. And I know I will need headspace because it's like 2 terabytes of material. So I need headspace to watch it all and then decide what it has to be. Yeah.
That's a lot of material to go through.
Yes, no time like the present, right?
Yeah, that's true. But what do you think has led to your obsession with terrariums? What is it about it that fascinates you?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's because ever since I was a kid, I've been obsessed with little things, not little things. Yeah, like, the idea that you could become very small or that you could, Honey, I Shrunk the Kid is one of my favorite all-time movies.
Yeah.
It just is one of those strange things. I just love the idea of creating climate in a bottle. Like the idea that you could have a little world where it would rain and there would be clouds. It's just something that has been in my head for ages. So this is the closest I've been able to come. It's nothing close. In the sense, the closest I could come to it is this work.
Have you ever been racked with feelings of self-doubt or is my work enough?
Of course, all the time.
How do you deal with it?
With patience and kindness with myself, and realizing that the same cliches actually are true. The fact that you can't compare yourself to other people, that you have your own path to walk. It sounds like a cliche as I'm saying it, but actually you have to kind of just live that and realize that actually, you can't start to doubt the work. I feel like, at least, it happens a little bit, but then you have to, it comes back to actually a simple thing of like, does it bring you joy? If I derive joy from the work the next day in the studio, then I just have to shut everything else out. And I think part of the reason I quit Facebook is because also there's too much noise now. I just feel like sometimes you need to block out the noise. Otherwise, it's not possible to stay true to what you're trying to do.
That's true.
There's a room for taking criticism. There's a room for taking feedback. But as you get older, I think if you've been able to figure out a little bit what it is that your work is trying to do, then you do know where you're going. And then you really need to start to keep some sort of noise filters on, and then get on with it, sort of thing. You just have to get on with the work. I think what you have to try not to, you have to also allow that moment of doubt, because you can't pretend it doesn't exist. So you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
But you also have to get on with it and get to making the work. I think the making of the work is what always makes me feel better. If I'm too long without making work, that's usually when I get the most insecure. So I have to then realize I have to get back to doing it, and then I feel then it's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going forward, what is it you hope your art to achieve?
I would love to be able to just jump in scale. That's something I would really love to do. I would love to be able to just explode in scale, because I think some things require that. Not everything.
Do you mean like
physical scale?
Okay.
Yeah. That's something I really hope to be able to do in the next 4 or 5 years. Do some things that I already know need a certain level of scale, and what that is, what that's going to look like is figuring that out. But otherwise, what I hope is just that people continue to see the work that goes into it, and not so much the work actually, that they maybe try and some of the questions I suppose that the work is looking at. It would be wonderful if conversations around that could be generated by the work. I think that's pretty much all an artist. That would be pretty great if you can just leave someone with a thought or a conversation to take forward. That would be great.
Okay. Will you be exploring more technology, how to bring more technology into art, say artificial intelligence or any other form?
Well, hope to, but it depends also on finding the right collaborator with something like that, and it depends on the work. But yeah, absolutely, I'm open to all of that. I think the big thing actually is finding someone who understands what we're both trying to do. As long as that is something that can happen, absolutely, I think the future is to see what other things will be opening up with technology. Absolutely, virtual reality, who knows,
Yeah.
these are all things that might be really exciting to explore.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, Rohini. It was a very interesting discussion.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. This is wonderful.
If you're interested to know more about Rohini Devasher's work, do check out our website, rohinidevasher.com. Take care.